So at my event in June, the purpose of it was a 2-day festival to connect the community to the veteran population, connect the veteran population to the community and resources, but also show the community how to better support their veterans besides just hanging a banner on Main Street. And what I kept hearing from usually they're 40-year-old males like that, around that age range, is like they would look at each other like, I had no idea you were a veteran. And they were neighbors. And it's just not discussed because you always see the older veterans wearing their caps, so they're easily identifiable. But the younger population, they're not telling people that they're veterans. They're not going out and socializing. They're not helping the younger crew because they had their totally different experience. These younger guys, they don't feel veteran enough. And that also deters them from reaching out for resources. They don't think they qualify for anything because they didn't go hard enough. And it's just like, it's still a sacrifice that you made.
Welcome to Your Story Doesn't End Here, the mental health podcast of military and veterans who refuse to be silenced. I'm your host, Rachel, and my mission with this podcast is to be a voice for those who don't have a voice, bring awareness to mental health issues, provide value and solutions, and to change the culture when it comes to mental health within the DoD organizations. Hey everyone, thank you so much for coming back for another episode of Your Story Doesn't End Here. Today I have some returning guests, Jenna, Carlton, and Michelle Lang. They've both been on the show before. I will link their episodes in the comments if you have not had a chance to check them out. But today we're talking about something a little bit different. The day that this episode launches will be the first day of the Military Influencers Conference, and we are all going to be on a panel together along with Juan Perez and Tyler Heisey, who unfortunately could not make it onto this episode today. But we're going to be talking about the topic of how to empower the most vulnerable veterans through mental health and community. And this is really focused on the younger veteran population. If you are at the Military Influencers Conference, we'll be speaking at 12:20 till 1 p.m. on the Marketplace stage on the 1st. So tomorrow, if you are listening to this episode, the day it releases. But I wanted to just take the opportunity to talk about why this topic is so important to each of us. And so we can start with you, Jenna, if you want to just introduce yourself again for those who don't know who you are, and then tell us why this topic is so important to you.
Absolutely. So my name's Jenna Carlton. Online, you may know me as the Millennial Veteran, which just speaks to why this is important to me. When I got out, I tried to connect with veterans because I thought that's what you're supposed to do, go to the Legion. When I went there, I didn't see anyone my age and didn't feel comfortable. And I just wanted to find out where are the younger veterans. And of course, they're online, which is why I started a community online. Trying to connect with younger veterans and bring them into the fold because we have an awesome veteran community. We have so many resources, so much support. So I just wanted to get younger veterans in. And as we will talk about in the panel, younger veterans are at risk. Anyone getting out of the military right away, but especially when you're younger and you fall victim to scams, there's a lot of people that prey on younger veterans. So just the more informed we are, the better.
And what about you, Michelle?
So my target audience that I focus on with my nonprofit, Operation Honor Roll Salute, is rural veterans. And that is a population that does not even know where to begin to look for resources because there's nothing in their town. People aren't gathering like they used to. Like Jenna said, younger people especially, they're not going to legions. There's not many opportunities for other people to connect with each other, share experiences, share resources, because in rural America, word of mouth is everything, and it's not happening. And then most people don't even know to go check out their county VSO, which has some resources. But again, they don't even have all the resources that are out there to help people. So it's kind of like a pit of despair. So sometimes you can get really down on yourself whenever you're living in rural America, feeling like there's no one to reach out to and there's no hope, but there totally, totally is. So my mission is to empower this population by sharing these resources, getting them the mental health. I want them to be mentally, spiritually, physically well. I want them to be pillars of their community and go out and lead the charge.
Awesome. And then I guess I'll answer my own question too. For me, A lot of the people that I've been around as a millennial myself have been a lot of younger veterans. And a lot of them, just like you said, Jenna, feel like they're in this position where they just don't quite know where they fit in as a veteran, or maybe a lot of them don't even necessarily identify as a veteran. A lot of questions that I get, because I also live in an area that's considered rural. When I tell people about different events that we're building in my community that include younger veterans, most people's first question is it just a bunch of old people? Because I think in the rural areas, like that is your standard token veteran persona. When people think of a veteran, they think of like your World War II or your Vietnam vet. It's usually an old guy with a beard who's sitting at the VFW or the Legion. And I know even a lot of those service organizations are trying to really change that narrative, but it's not necessarily an easy feat because there is this gap with the generations of veterans. I'm curious, have either of you seen anything in your time that you've done the work that you do that has really spearheaded this conversation about the inclusivity of younger veterans other than the work that you're doing? Either of you can take that.
Sure. So I've seen so many people want to try, like people come in and out of our group all the time saying, I'm going to change the Legion, or there are some really, really like, ambitious people who are taking up legions, like they're the new commander, they're younger, or they're just redoing their legion, making it more maybe health based, having a gym or something, more activity, more family friendly, because most younger veterans have families, they have kids. So, going to a place where they're not welcome isn't very welcoming to families. But as far as like an organization coming in, I know there's some places out there, but nothing I've seen locally. I think part of the problem is like there is less veterans who are younger population, like there's compared to World War II, Vietnam, so many more people just in mass population served than us. We're becoming more rare. So that's part of the problem. You're not coming back to your hometown and knowing a few people who've served. You might have been one of the few people in your neighborhood or your school that served. So it's just different too on top of that.
Do you think that some of the issue lies in people's like identity as a veteran? Because I think there are some people that feel like because they didn't do quote unquote enough, that they're not veteran enough. Or I know like a huge thing that I see is that distinction between like combat veteran and non-combat veteran, and some people feeling like they don't quite fit the mold to even be a part of the veteran community, if that makes sense. I know you've talked about this before on your channels, Jenna.
Yes, definitely. And especially like women veteran, we're less likely to identify or be identifiable, which means like look like a veteran. We're less likely to do that. And honestly, I felt weird as a veteran who is 22, female in college. You just feel like, okay, yeah, I'm a vet. And people are like, sure, like they don't know what to do with that. So, yes, that's absolutely a part of the problem.
And I think on the rural side of things, and I don't know if this has been your experience and what you've seen or the people you've connected with, Michelle, but when I was talking to people in my community that aren't veterans, or maybe they are and they're older veterans, people didn't think that younger veterans existed in the community. That was something I heard quite a bit was, oh, well, they're just not here. They just don't exist here. And I was like, they do. They're just not coming out of their houses because why would they? Everything is kind of centered around a specific demographic of veterans. Have you heard that at all in your experience?
Yeah, I actually experienced that firsthand. So at my event in June, the purpose of it was a 2-day festival to connect the community to the veteran population, connect the veteran population to the community and resources, but also show the community how to better support their veterans besides just hanging a banner on Main Street. And what I kept hearing from the like, usually they're 40-year-old males like that around that age range is like, I had no, like they would look at each other like, I had no idea you were a veteran. And they were neighbors. And it's just not discussed. And I really didn't get into it with them, but I thought that was interesting because I heard that so much that day because you always see the older veterans wearing their caps, wearing their Vietnam veteran or, Navy, Army cap. so they're easily identifiable. But the younger population, I usually work with people that are like 28 to 45 range. And even that 45 range, they're not telling people that they're veterans. They're not going out and socializing. They're not helping the younger crew because they had their totally different experience. These younger guys, they don't feel veteran enough, a lot of them. And that also deters them from reaching out for resources. They don't think they qualify for anything because they didn't go hard enough. And it's just like, no, dude, you still can take advantage of all these resources. You're veteran enough. It's still a sacrifice that you made. So it is interesting to kind of break through that psychology there.
And so I think the big looming question that a lot of people ask is how do we connect younger veterans? I get that question quite a bit. My answer is usually you have to do things differently. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, both of you.
Yeah, I have a lot of people, organizations reaching out to me like, we want to attract more younger, more millennials. And a lot of it is kind of scheduling. All of the veteran things around here that I've attended are usually like coffee socials during the work day. And I drag my daughter along, but you can tell it's like I'm the only one with a kid there. So really just like making it adaptable for family and making it, like at a time where younger people aren't working or just I guess any age isn't working would be really helpful. And also making it attractive to them. And I know that's a lot of things organizations don't want to do is to change what works for them and what doesn't. And I guess a lot of that kind of depends on where you are in the country too, like what are kind of
Yeah.
the norms that can get people out of their house.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it too, is millennials are very family oriented. They want to be together. Like we're this weird generation where we like spending time together. And this is exactly what the military gets wrong, right? It's supposed to be, people first, and it never is. You're supposed to, care about your soldier's spouse and, family. And people get out because they realize they're not cared about, their family's not cared about. So why are we recreating that model on the veteran side whenever people want to be together? They want to have marriages that last. That's probably why they got out of the military. They want to do these things together. So give them what they want. And I'm telling you what, have a bounce house there, you're going to get some kids there. Market to the kids, you're going to get veterans and spouses.
Yeah, that's something that I hear commonly too, from what both of you said. An example that I like to use is in my community, there's Veterans Day coming up, the celebration that they do for Veterans Day. And it's hosted by a service organization. And they had asked me to come in and help attract younger veterans to this event they do every year. And so one of my first questions was, well, what's your demographic that usually shows up? They said old and old. I said, okay, what are you doing every year? Well, we have the different service organization songs like the Navy hymn, the Marine Corps hymn. We have the bands come in. We have a speaker who's like, this year, for example, it's someone from the base. And one of the first things that I did was I looked at them and I'm like, you're not going to attract younger veterans if you're playing like the patriotic music and having the band there. And don't get me wrong, some younger vets might be into that, but to me, that's like not something that's attractive. And it is, I think, one of those things where, yeah, you do have to think a bit outside the box because what's going to be attractive to one person won't necessarily be attractive to another person. But I think the core root of the issue here is that you can't keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. But people get very comfortable with doing what they've been doing because I think generationally, veteran has been associated with this like really, really patriotic attitude, right? Like American flags and Star Spangled Banner and all these different like service hymns. And so I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, I guess, patriotic approach. And if you think that that is hindering younger veterans from going to events, or do you think that that is very specific on area?
What I see is civilians love that. The younger veterans don't. Like there's even with our my brand and the way like some other military brands have thought about it is like we're not overall patriotic. Like people have been hurt by the military, like moral injury is a very real thing. People sometimes when they get out, they're not comfortable, doing all the patriotic stuff, and we're not into it. We've been there, done that, but civilians love it. And that's how they kind of express their gratitude. So marrying those in a way where it's like you want the whole community there, right? So that's what I found whenever we try and do things is a little column A, a little column B to kind of appeal to both sides. But I would definitely say like the patriotic side is more for the civilians. The more chill, like get to the point type of stuff is for the veterans.
Michelle, that's a great point because that's so true. And that's just how we're associated, like veterans, American flag, bald eagles, like the pride, that's what we want on Veterans Day. We want red, white, and blue, but it is such a complex issue among veterans. And you named a few, just like the betrayal by the military, not feeling represented in veterans in the military, all of that. So it is such a hard line to toe. And I think so many of us, especially when you get out of the military, you think all of that's kind of cringy because you're trying to distance yourself from the military and move on. And then, people keep putting you in this box of like, patriotic. And I think especially during these times, like even the word patriot is so divisive and so weaponized that it just, puts us veterans in a box that we don't want to be in or we don't really associate with. So, yeah. What do you think, Rachel?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with all that. And I love that you brought up the point, Michelle, of you civilians love it. And so then it makes me think, like, who are we really doing this for at the end of the day? Like, is anyone actually having conversations with veterans and asking them? Because I know even for a lot of Vietnam veterans, and completely different generation, a lot of them experience trauma coming home from Vietnam. And so I'm curious, like, if anyone has ever had conversations with vets to ask, what do you want to see at a Veterans Day event? Because that's a really different perspective that I hadn't thought of. So, yeah, I mean, so many complex things here, right? Like the trauma of the military, moral injury is a really, really huge one that has come to light in more recent years. I don't think that people have the same feeling. And it's not to say that vets don't have pride for serving. I think a lot of people can misconstrue that and think, well, like, why wouldn't you have pride for your country? I think we can exist in a world with both, where maybe I necessarily don't resonate with all this super over patriotic stuff, but I'm still proud of parts of my service. And I think that's a really hard thing to mentally tackle for a lot of vets and even active duty. Do you think this is something that starts well before someone even becomes a veteran? Like, do you think that this kind of attitude and these things that we're seeing perpetuating into the veteran space starts when someone is serving and they're a younger military member?
So are you asking like just like the perception that
Yeah, I mean, all these things that this attitude that kind of goes into being a younger vet. So kind of everything that combined that we talked about. We talked about, people really not identifying as a veteran, all these issues that, not including family, these traumas as a veteran. Do you think that there's things that we could do on the active duty side that would help kind of mitigate a lot of these issues that we're seeing with younger vets?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, like you mentioned, like we have this perception of how our service is going to be, and it's going to be honorable. Everyone tells you, you're doing such a great thing for our country. Next year, Veterans Day, I'm going to be cheering to you because you're going to be serving our country. Like we're really like sold this slice of patriotic pie, and not everyone has that experience. Some people are just like, hey, like I got to get out of my hometown, or I need to pay for college, I'll drink the Kool-Aid, I'll serve the military. But like you're still put on a pedestal. Like people around you are proud of you for going. Grandparents, uncles, your little siblings, everyone's looking up to you for going. And then you go and you're just like, wow, I am a glorified janitor. At first we all have kind of those crappy jobs. And then maybe you see further behind the curtain and you're like, oh, wow, there's a lot of corruption, or, maybe you're just seeing bad actors act in, bad faith. So you're seeing like toxic leadership, or you're seeing people missing family funerals because their leadership won't let them go. It just like petty things like that, that kind of wear on you over time. So, when you get out, you're just like, yeah, we can't make all these guys heroes. We can't make all these people heroes. It's, we're really, you may feel like the military is way over glorified. And I've caught myself rolling my eyes a few times at movies, or just, people in general saying, "Oh, they're so good. Did you see all the stuff they do?" Or, "Do you know this veteran?" Like some celebrity influencer, and you're just like, "Yep, I've heard of them," sort of thing. I think I took your question a different direction though.
No, that was great. I think the other thing that comes to mind for me too is also kind of in a different direction. But I guess in my community, I see, probably not intended, but gaslighting from people that had a good experience in their service. And this comes across all generations. I mean, we'll see the town recruiter will go post on one of our like Facebook community pages trying to get people to join the Navy. And then you get this garden variety of comments underneath where one person had a good experience and they're like, people need to join the Navy for this reason. It was great. And then you get the people who are traumatized and, they say the same thing. And I personally think that a lot of that obviously does start in service, because that's what lays a foundation for being a veteran, is what your experience in your service was. But something that comes to mind when you're speaking as well is I remember when I first joined the Navy, when I was at I think it was the moment of truth or something, and everyone's exhausted, and they asked us why we joined the Navy. And people are raising their hands and they're giving their honest answers. Yeah, I joined the Navy for school. I joined the Navy to get out of my hometown. And this little Filipino man was yelling at all of us. And he's like, no, you joined the Navy because you want to serve your country. And what's funny is from that moment on, anytime anyone asked me why I joined the Navy, my first answer, even though it never really felt right, was because I want to serve my country, because that's what was ingrained into my brain from literally day one. And so I think that's the other piece of that patriotism that doesn't really feel patriotic. But again, I served with people who absolutely love America, like to their core. They're like a fourth generation military brat in their family, and patriotism is like their thing. And so it really is kind of across the board. What are your thoughts, Michelle, from the people that you've interacted with?
I think it really comes down to leadership, to be honest, because the people that down here, there's a large special forces community. And, those are the people that are like, gung ho, gone at it, military, eat, sleep, breathe it. And a lot of them are like kind of like apathetic. And like even my husband, for example, like when he got into the military, he was like, yes, I want to serve my country. I've wanted to do this my whole life. Like I'm so excited to be able to do it. And now 13 years in, so many bad leaders have sort of broken him down and he still hangs in. But if everyone was like his last boss, our military would be just outstanding, because that was truly a leader. Like I love him to death. I feel I would follow him into the gates of hell. Like he is amazing. He put our family first. He put Chris first. He sacrificed himself for a lot of situations for the greater good of the team. Just like the true example of a leader. And that's what we're missing in a lot of ways in this military today, because we have a system that's set up right now based on rating that is intended to be good, but it comes at the detriment to the people that you're rating, so that way you look better. So you have to step on a lot of necks to climb to the top. And that's who came up with that? But that hurts. That's where people get morally injured that never went to combat or, did these things. Like it starts at your desk. And it is so easy to get mentally jacked up, even if you had an office job for 4 years or 5 years, because, oh my gosh, I went on a tangent, but the military makes them this way.
I'm glad you brought up the leadership part, because it is so important. Then even the people who are bad leaders, a lot of them perpetuate that into being a veteran too, which really can impact the veteran community. Because if you have someone who has this high horse and ego that's at a service organization, and you come in freshly out of the military And I think for me, at least when I left the military, it took me a while to rewire my brain to not think that just because someone was a chief or an officer, that they were like above me, and not necessarily better than me, above me, but we're obviously trained to have this certain level of respect for people at higher ranks. And I carried that with me for probably at least a year after my service, unintentionally. But I imagine walking into a service organization and meeting someone that was a poor leader in service, or even in like the smaller rural communities, right? Maybe seeing someone that you served with that was a toxic leader, because that could very well happen in even my community. That can be very traumatizing and also hinder a lot of younger vets from even wanting to participate in these organizations or these activities, just that community and being around people like that. So leadership is definitely a huge, huge part of it, which goes back to the culture, and there's a lot of pieces to it. Unfortunately, it's not a cookie cutter answer. The last question I wanted to ask the both of you is, why is it important for people to come out and listen to us speak on our panel about younger veterans?
It's so important, and this kinda ties back to just the whole you being gaslight by, like, people in the community, because that's what I felt like. Michelle felt like this too last year, like, everyone was presenting the military veteran community like just a box of rainbows and sunshine, and, we're all doing great with our military experience, we can get the best jobs, we're CEOs, we're making all this money, and I was just like, whoa, like, this is not the veteran community I serve. Like, I have people reaching out in the Facebook group saying they're about to be homeless. I have people who are, you know, suffering with addiction and all of this, like, in my inbox constantly, and it just felt completely gaslit, like, by this whole conference of like, wow. And I know, like, okay, we don't have to just talk about all the bad, like, we need to talk about the good, but just like I was just like, "We gotta do something, Michelle, like, next year, we have to have a voice in this," and I think a big part of it was because younger veterans weren't on the stage unless they were, very cookie cutter, almost like a mouthpiece up there, which I may have mentioned in an op-ed for Task and Purpose, um, but yes, us being there is so important, and talking about the real struggles, the nitty-gritty of what veterans out in America are experiencing, getting out, what that first year is like, and statistically the hardest, like, it's gonna be so cool for us to have a voice there, and it's gonna make an impact, and I know people are gonna be talking about it, and yes, if you're listening to this and you're gonna be there, please, please, please. Actually, I know you will because you're listening to Rachel, so you gotta be there.
And Michelle, why is it important for people to come and listen to what we have to say?
It's an honest conversation that needs to be had, and last year, there really wasn't, this everything was it was great. It was a great conference, but we're digging underneath the surface here, and we cannot ignore the fact that more people are dying by suicide than they are by combat. Like, you cannot ignore that. You cannot wanna hire veterans and, do all these things, but ignore the fact that they're still struggling somewhere. And in my experience, I have not met a veteran or helped a veteran that wasn't willing to do the work. And so it's not about like perpetuating the stereotype of the broken veteran. That's not it at all. The reality is a lot of veterans want to do the work. They just don't know where the hell to go to do the work or begin because they're isolated. They don't know who to talk to. Like, just start having conversations. That's why I say you need to start having conversations with people to lay that framework, to have people be comfortable with you, to say, "Hey, I'm not okay right now." Because I know personally in my situation, if I wouldn't have had that framework with my husband, we would have been in a different scenario right now. This would not be our life. And so it's just time to kind of face the music and dig a little bit deeper about these issues, because we can't just keep kind of brushing things under the rug.
And I say what I absolutely love about this dynamic panel that we have for Mick is that we're not afraid to speak up and have these honest conversations. It's not sugar coated, and we're actually talking about the raw, real truth of what's going on, which is so important. I think it's damaging to the active duty community to constantly see only the light, fluffy, good. I got a really good job because I'm a veteran. I think that to me, when I was active duty, was damaging because I felt like I was going to get out and it was going to be all sunshine and rainbows. So I'm super, super grateful that we have the opportunity to even have a voice in this spectrum. If you are out at MIC in Atlanta, please come out and listen to this panel. It'll be October 1st, 12:20 p.m. on the Marketplace stage. And where's the location again? The Hilton. I'll link the
It's the Hilton in Atlanta.
Okay, Hilton in Atlanta. I'll link the website to Mick for anyone who hasn't grabbed tickets yet. If you're in the area, please come out. Tell your friends about it. Tell the people that you know in the area about it. Because again, this is so, so, so important. And the more we can have these conversations, this is where we make real, true change within the veteran community. So we will see you guys in Atlanta on October 1st. And thanks for listening today. Thank you for taking the time to listen in today. With your support, we are able to increase awareness of the mental health issues affecting service members and veterans today with the goal of creating positive change. If you got value from this episode, please take 30 seconds to subscribe and share this episode within your own network. Until next time, remember, your story matters, your mental health matters, and your story doesn't end here.